lot about judgment, specifically about the great judgment coming at the end of all time. This isn't a really popular idea now, but if you read the scriptures, you really can't ignore that there will, in fact, come a time when all of us are adjudicated on our behaviors and on our allegiance. Now, that's pretty scary, and I think we have this picture in our mind of everybody kind of standing before God as he sits on his throne, and one by one he either pushes a button that opens a trapdoor and sends you screaming into hell, or you grow wings and get a harp and ascend into heaven. But let me take some of the lampooning away from that image. The word judgment in the Bible means making things right. So when God judges, when he makes judgments, and certainly this would count for the final eschatological judgment, I mean the big judgment at the end, what he's doing is acting to restore things to their optimum conditions. When he judges us, he's acting to restore us to the people he's designed us to become. When he's acting to judge the world, he's judging it so that the world can be healed and fixed and remade in the way that he first intended. Now, please don't misunderstand. That doesn't mean that judgment is somehow unilaterally pleasant. No, the judgment is painful. And in fact, when God's judgments come to us, we're told that there's one of only two ways you can respond. You can either accept his judgment and surrender to his authority and his lordship, at which point, at the end of all time, you're permitted to reign with him in eternity, or you will rebel against his judgment and reject his authority, at which point you'll spend the rest of your existence, however long that might be, in torment or anguish or something not good. But of course, all kinds of people think, well, okay, so I'm not ready to surrender my life to God now, but when that judgment comes, I'll make a different decision so I don't, go to hell or whatever. Well, that's actually a really flawed line of thinking, because the truth is, if you don't love God, and if you don't want to surrender to him now, why would you surrender to him later? There's only going to be more of him later, so to speak. His presence will only be more intense. His authority will only be more pervasive. If you don't love the Lord, you don't love the law of the Lord, you don't love the presence of the Lord, why would you ever submit to the law of the Lord? I mean, think about it like this. It's like God's having a big party at his house. If you hate him, why are you going to go to his house and be grumpy and stand sullen and pouting in the corner all of the time? I mean, realistically, think about what's actually on the table here and what's being offered. It's eternity worshiping God. If you don't want to worship him, why would you want to worship him forever? It just doesn't make a ton of sense. Well, anyway, that's how that judgment works. And then, of course, focusing for just a moment on the positive, then people think, okay, well, if I, quote unquote, pass that judgment, then I go to heaven. Okay, well, heaven's not so much a place as it is a state of existence. Now, that's not to say that there's no future heavenly plane, but the Bible makes it quite clear that what we're promised is not some ethereal, wispy, non-substantial heaven in another universe. The Bible makes it clear that heaven is corporeal. It's bodily, it's physical, it's material. That at the end of time there'll be a new heavens and a new earth and a new creation, which is really this world remade. So think about it like heaven and earth being two halves of one whole, and heaven is kind of God's control room. It's the place where he's in charge, and the earth is the part that's spun wildly out of control, like they're a duplex. Heaven is on one side, earth on the other, and the heaven part is working great, but the earth part is full of lousy, rowdy neighbors. Well, at the end of all time, God's going to break down the barrier in the middle of that duplex and make it just one house again. Heaven will, in a sense, then invade earth so that the whole house will be under the authority and presence of God. And in that new house, in that new heaven, that new earth, that new creation, we're not going to exist as spirits. We will be given our bodies back. That's why the New Testament, especially Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, talks about a physical bodily resurrection, that we get our bodies. That's why Jesus, when he rose up from the grave, didn't show up as a spirit. He showed up as a person, as a human made of meat. That's why Thomas could, touch his hands in his side. That's why he could eat broiled fish. I mean, he was a guy again, and we too will be men and women. We will be people in the new creation, and that's really what our eternal destiny is, according to the Scripture. Not some wispy, spiritual, immaterial harp sing, but rather God taking up residence here, healing and fixing this world, healing and restoring our bodies here so that we can cooperate with him here and reign for all eternity.